Yeah. Well, as Carla mentioned a little bit earlier, we got to church, I opened up my briefcase, and I realized all my notes were still sitting on the kitchen table back at home. So I was remarkably calm about it. I knew I had enough time to go home and get them and stuff, but I get home, and a lot of you know Carla and I have a bird, a parrot. And so I walk in, and Joey, our parrot, is holding this big party, with booze and rock and roll music, and they're all watching Disney movies. So I had to scold Joey. Then I grabbed this, and I went out to the car, and I put this on the roof of my car, and in my pocket, get in the car. As I'm driving, I see the folder tumble off the back in the back window. So I put the car in park and say, okay, God, do you want me to do this thing this morning? Or do you have some other idea? Because I'm open to guidance. And I listened very quietly, and God said, I'm just messing with you. There is divine order. We don't know quite why, but it happens. And as Carla had mentioned, with her cochlear implant, I was realizing how three major points. One is that I've been praying since the year 2000 that Carla has her hearing restored. And now I see it coming to fruition. Second is that, as part of this process, they did an MRI of Carla's head. And I realized how many times I said, I wish she would just get her head examined. And Carla often would turn to me and says, I need you like I need another hole in the head, and she's going to get another hole in her head. So you see that your prayers are answered. Good morning. When Carla and I were in the Unity Seminary, each seminary class has some international students. Someone from, we actually had one student who was from Nepal, although he had to leave early because of the turmoil in his country. And back then, eventually they overthrew their dictator and have a democracy now. But we had three students. We had a married couple and another woman who were from Jamaica. And I've never been to Jamaica. I hear it's a beautiful place, but Jamaica, as a number of the islands there around the Caribbean, it was a slave state for many years. And and of course our three classmates were also African Jamaican. So, but they would talk about Jamaica. There's this tradition in Jamaica, especially among the former Africans, of that Jamaica was the land of looking back. And what would happen was, as here in the United States, slaves would escape from their slave owners, but they had to find refuge someplace. And I guess there was this string of hills there in Jamaica that had these thick bushes with these long thorns on them. And so when you go up there, it was kind of like, people would just stop because there was really no way to get through this, this briar. But I guess some slaves had cut a pathway, a hidden pathway through these briars so that they could be on the other side and there would be this refuge for them as escaped slaves. But they said that they were all kind of suffering post-traumatic stress syndrome, even though they didn't know what to call it back then, and that they were always afraid that they were going to be found. They were always looking back over their shoulder, afraid that they'd be found and brought back as slaves to their slave owners. Now each of us have experiences in our life. And these experiences can either make us stronger or they can hold us back. I found in my life just embracing some of these experiences that I had and being willing to release the emotions of it, come to peace with it so that I can get to the point that I can remember it without reliving it. It's a very powerful process of being able to move forward. See, the challenge for so many of us in our society is that most people get disillusioned. Most people give up on their dreams too early. Most people do not dream big enough. But we are not most people. We are Unity Truth students, or as we lovingly call ourselves, Unitics. In the Gospel of Luke, first chapter, 37th verse, the writer describes several things which are impossible. You know, a barren woman giving birth, and of course a virgin woman giving birth. And he goes through these things, and then he says, for nothing is impossible with God. Now here in Unity, even though a lot of times we'll talk about God as being separate from ourselves, we recognize that there's no need to be more spiritual. We're already spiritual beings having a human experience. We just need to awaken to that truth and recognize that we're already part of God. It's just a matter of, are we awake to it? Are we willing to wake to that recognition that we're a cell in this body of Christ, this body of God, and that we have a special role to play in this world because we are a part of something much bigger than ourselves. You see, a lot of people have heard that they were children of God. You're a child of God. Well, children grow up, so you're now an adult in God. And it's time to claim your inheritance. So take a moment, just for a moment. What is your capacity? What is possible for you to achieve? What is possible for you to do? Are you willing to open your mind that something even better can happen? What if it were impossible for you to fail? What would you attempt then? What we want to be is, we want to be more than what we thought we were. We want to be more than just this physical body that we are on this planet. We want to be co-creators with the God energy. We want to play our part. So it's time for us to wake up and dream. And of course, dreams, have several connotations. One, of course, is our sleeping dreams, but people understand that during our waking hours, a dream is that sense, that thing that we really want to do that just sticks with us. Not a whim, but, a dream. Yeah, it's like, I really want to do this. Every person here has a dream. So the question is, what happened to those dreams? Have they come to fruition? Or did you let go of them at some point? Is it possible for you to have that dream come through? Only you have the answer. And today I'm going to go over 5 questions to ask yourself. I'm going to have Jesse put up our first slide. First one is, what is your dream? Does that dream ignite a passion in you? Like I said, it's not just a whim. It's like it keeps coming back because it's there. You know in your heart that this is something you want to do at some point in your life. And if you have this dream, it is yours to demonstrate because you have caught that divine download, that divine idea that is right for you to express. Each day of our lives, we're born anew. We have an opportunity to sleep, and we wake up and have a new opportunity to get it right this time, to just do what is ours to do in that day. Charles Fillmore had an affirmation, I spring forth with zeal and enthusiasm to do the things that are mine to do today. They found this handwritten affirmation on his desk the day after he died at the age of 93. So if Charles Fillmore at age 93 recognized that he had something to do the next day, then you do too. I have an affirmation for you to use. I know when Carla and I were traveling doing prosperity seminars, I would give everybody this affirmation. You have this dream. You haven't got a clue how it's going to happen. But you have this dream, so you set this intention, you put it out there, and you use the affirmation, because the mind will start in, well, how is this going to happen? So the affirmation is, how is none of my business? How is none of my business? Okay, everyone say it with me. How is none of my business? What I'm encouraging you to do today and during this week is to open up to the possibilities. Because if you can conceive it, you can achieve it. Your imagination forms this spiritual substance into what it is that you want to see happen in the world. Of course, a lot of it comes through coincidences. Other people are suddenly helping you, or you bump into someone who who can help you along the way. Last week I had mentioned Carla's cochlear implant. It turns out there's a woman here, just came from Australia. She came up to Carla afterwards and she says, I work for the company that make those cochlear implants. And she's going to get together with Carla for lunch to give her all sorts of information and tips, for the upcoming process. But what are the odds? This is something that we've wanted for some time, and this woman, I guess, is going to be here for like 6 months or so, and found us. Just happened to be here last week when I mentioned it. You never know. There was a middle-aged woman. She's actually a New Thought minister. Was vacationing with her adult children and their spouses, and it was a beach vacation, so there were all these sand dunes, and they rented some all-terrain vehicles, those little four-wheelers where you with the motorcycle controls, and she's watching, as her adult children, no fear, I mean, they're just zooming up over the sand dunes, making big jumps. She, though, would get about halfway up the sand dunes and start sliding back down. And she was recognizing how nervous and stuff she was feeling, and all of a sudden one of her son-in-laws drives up next to her. Says, Mary, I can't help but notice that even though you're gunning the accelerator, you've got your foot on the brake. How many of us have our foot on the brake? To achieve our dreams, we have to take our foot off the brake. And we may have to give up a few things, like give up the fear, give up the excuses, give up the rationalization. So let's move on to number 2. Does it align with your core values? Sometimes we have a dream, but does it align with your core values? There was a college professor. He started out a lesson. He had a big glass jar there on the table in front of him, and it was full of rocks about the size of golf balls. And it was up, past the brim. And he says to his college students, is this jar full? And one of the students in front says, yeah, it's full. And then he takes a pitcher of gravel and pours it in, and all this gravel pours in and goes in down in between all of the rocks until it gets to the brim. And the professor says, is this glass full? College students are smart. They start to get that there's a theme here. He pulls out some sand, pours sand in it, and the sand fills in all of the little voids. And once again, he asks, is this jar full? And everybody says no. He pulls out a pitcher of water, pours the water in until it just goes overflowing. And then the professor said, I want you to remember something. The rocks in this jar, recognize that these rocks represent your core values, the things that are most important to you. Life is like this jar. We have those things that are the most important to us. But along comes the gravel and the sand and the water. And if we aren't sure that we have our core values embedded in that jar ahead of time, it's going to get filled up with all this other stuff. So what are your core values? Let me give you an example. There was a woman who had this dream of being a performer on a cruise ship. But she had life come along the way. She got married, had kids, but she always had this burning desire, and her husband wanted to be supportive of her and says, go for it, honey. The reason she was hesitant is because if you do it, you've got to stay on the ship for 4 months. You take a 4-month assignment. So she got this job, and she did it, and she was just loving it, but after about 3 months, she recognized she was miserable. And what she recognized was that she really missed her family, she missed her husband, and that while it was nice to have done it for the short amount of time, that she decided she wasn't going to re-up after the 4 months. She had her opportunity to do that because her values had changed. And I can kind of relate to that. I know many of you know that I worked as a radio and television newsman for like 17 years. I enjoyed it a lot, and of course I moved my way up to managing a newsroom as the editor or the producer. And but it just got to the point as the years went by. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. Can you imagine the hours that radio and TV news people work? I know at one point I was doing the 6 a.m. news. Now they're starting it at 4:30. But I had to get to work by 3:30 in the morning, to be able to digest all of the news and have it ready for the anchor people and all that at 6 o'clock. I finally got to the point where it's like, I'm to the point in my life, I've done this, I love it, but there's something else I got to do. This just isn't working for me anywhere. Not being able to be with family and friends, nights, weekends. So there are times where we have many chapters in our book of life. Something that worked very well for you in your 20s doesn't work in your 30s, and doesn't work in your 40s, doesn't work in your 50s, etc., etc. There can be a series of divine purposes for you. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Are you willing to grow? Each experience has its pleasant and its unpleasant experiences, but we need to recognize that this journey will help us grow. It'll stretch us. And like I say, sometimes it'll feel unpleasant, but the overall arc is upward. A young man went fishing along this river. He just moved to the area, and he's fishing and catches some fish, but down the way he sees this elderly gentleman. He's fishing, and he'll pull in these big fish, and he'll pull out this ruler, and then he'd unhook the fish and threw it back. But then these other smaller fish that he would catch, he'd put up against the ruler, and he'd put those in his bucket. And so finally, as he was getting ready to wrap up fishing, the young man went down and talked to the elderly gentleman and said, I noticed that, you throw back the big fish, but you keep, like, the medium-sized fish. And I was just wondering, is it just a matter of the type of fish? Is there a difference in the flavor and all that? And the man looked at him and says, no, I just need fish that'll fit in my frying pan. How many of us go through life like that? It's like, well, yeah, but this is all I can handle. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's time to get a bigger frying pan. Okay, let's move on to number 4. Are you co-creating with God? Now, I know on the front of your bulletin I had, Carly put the 5 takeaways, but you'll notice there's a typo there. So if you want to scratch out others and put, are you co-creating with God, to take this home to work with this week. Now, I already touched on this a few moments ago. We have to recognize that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. There are so many times in my life, so many times since Carla and I took this job here at Unity of Indianapolis, where something comes up, and I'm like, boy, I don't know how this is going to happen. I can't see how this is going to happen. But then I remember this wise teacher said, how is none of my business? So I opened to the possibilities. Gospel of Matthew, 18th chapter, 18th verse. Matthew 18:18. Jesus says, truly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And remember, we talked about the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is that ever-growing awareness of God, where the kingdom of God is that absolute aspect of God that's always, never changing, always there for us. So whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So, denials and affirmations, being willing to make the prayers, to let things go or to pull things in. Again, I say to you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything they ask, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. I'm looking at a group of people who could pair up and have a prayer partner. I really encourage you to just have someone you can talk to on the phone for maybe 5 minutes. Just give each other your prayer requests and pray together, whether it's once a week, some people do it once a day. Find someone who'd be willing to be supportive of you. Not stand, that's the beautiful thing about it is we've got, a group of people here who are willing to let go of condemnation and realize, hey, if this is what you want, I'll support you in it. I really want to encourage you to just find someone who's be willing to be your prayer partner. Many of you are aware of the self-help author, Wayne Dyer. I was looking him up last night, and I didn't realize he's now 75 years old. But he's got a doctorate of education and counseling, of course, and has done a number of books and does the PBS pledge drives, of course, with the guy with the mustache and the shaved head. And his first really powerful book in the 1970s was Your Erroneous Zones. There was a time that he had been booked to speak at a convention in Chicago. And he went to the airport and found out that his flight had been canceled as well as many others. So, he went to the desk to ask, I need to be in Chicago tonight, and the person there on the committee says, I'm sorry, that it's just not going to happen. It's impossible. And Wayne took a deep breath and said, could I talk to your supervisor? And the guy's like, oh, okay, you know, and he goes and gets the supervisor, and the supervisor comes. And he says to the supervisor, I know this is a rough day for all of you, but each of us have things that are very important in our lives. This man tells me it's impossible for me to be in Chicago this evening. What I need is somebody who will have the mindset that it's possible for me to be in Chicago this evening. And a light bulb went on over the manager's head, and he said, okay, let me look. And he spent about 30 seconds. He says, you know, Mr. Dyer, there's a possibility here. And Wayne Dyer did arrive about 10 minutes before he was supposed to give his speech at the convention in Chicago. But if you take that mindset right away of like, this isn't going to happen, you just need to let that go and open to the possibility. And then let's move on to number 5. Is it good for others? One of the reasons we are here on this physical planet with each other is that each of us has a certain level of unworthiness. It's very hard to see in ourselves what others see in us. So we're here to bring out the best in each other. And when we do something, we have each been given special gifts, passions, and talents to do things to make this world a better place, to help out the human race. So does your dream serve humankind? Is it good for everybody? Months ago, we gathered over here in the friendship room, spent an entire day on Saturday, came up with our vision, mission, and core values, which is at the bottom of the front page of your bulletin. And then we met again to just kind of brainstorm, come up with ideas, ask people to just kind of throw out things, what they want to see happen here at Unity of Indianapolis. So this afternoon here, at noon, we're going to get together once again. And this time we're going to start narrowing things down and getting specific. We'll talk about various areas of Unity of Indianapolis, and then we're going to break up into groups in various rooms and just spend like 30 minutes talking about a particular topic. We'll have like 3 cycles of them, so if you want to maybe hit a couple of different areas, you'll have the opportunity to do that. But what we're looking for is people who really feel like, yeah, Unity of Indianapolis is my church, and just being willing to come to a consensus about things that you'd like to see us as a community focus on over the next 12 to 18 months. So that'll be at 12 o'clock here in the friendship room. So I invite you to come in and join us. So let's do a quick review of the 5 up there. These are your takeaways for the week. Is your dream possible? Well, 1, what is your dream? You don't recognize that if you have a dream, it is possible for you to achieve. Does it align with your core values? Is it something that you see in alignment with what it is you want to do in life? Number 3, are you willing to grow? Are you willing to have that stretch happen? Number 4, are you co-creating with God? You know, is this something that would be absolutely impossible if you didn't know that you're in partnership with God? And number 5, is it good for others? So I encourage you to work with these 5 questions this week. Our closing story is a 3-minute video from Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News about a man who recognized that one dream was coming to an end and that he had a new dream.
At one point, number 6, Jason Brown was one of the best centers in the NFL. At one point, he had a 5-year, $37 million contract.
Sorry, you're running it.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. You can just back it up one slide and go forward, and that'll reset it.
At one point, number 60, Jason Brown was one of the best centers in the NFL. At one point, he had a 5-year, $37 million contract with the St. Louis Rams. And at one point, he decided it was all meaningless and just walked away from football.
My agent, he told me, he said, you're making the biggest mistake of your life? And I looked right back at him. I said, no, I am not. No, I am not.
So what could possibly trump the NFL? You wouldn't believe. Jason Brown quit football to be a plain old farmer, even though he never farmed a day in his life.
How did you learn even to do what you're doing?
Get on the internet. You watch YouTube videos.
So you learned how to farm from YouTube?
Yeah.
You can still plant your crops.
Thanks to YouTube and some good advice from other farmers here in Lewisburg, North Carolina. This week, Jason finished harvesting his first 5-acre plot of sweet potatoes.
When you see them pop up out of the ground, man, it's the most beautiful thing that you could ever see.
He says he has never felt more successful.
Not in man's standards, but in God's eyes.
But God cares about the NFL. I see people praying to him on the field all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of people praying out there, but when I think about a life of greatness, I think about a life of service.
Which leads us here.
Which leads us here. Yes.
See, his plan for this farm, which he calls First Fruits Farm, is to donate the first fruits of every harvest to food pantries. Today, it's all 5 acres, 100,000 pounds of sweet potatoes.
It's unusual for a grower to grow a crop just to give away.
Rebecca Page organizes food collection for the needy.
And that's what Jason has done. And he's planning to do more next year.
Jason has 1,000 acres here, which could go a long way toward eliminating hunger in this neck of North Carolina.
Love is the most wonderful currency that you can give anyone.
You sure you played in the NFL?
Yes.
Because I feel like cuddling you right now.
Don't do that.
Jason may have left the NFL, but apparently holding is still a penalty. Steve Hartman on the road in Lewisburg, North Carolina.
From the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 17, 20th verse. Jesus said to them, "For truly I say to you, if you have faith as small as a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you." And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace. It's now time for our tithes and offerings. So as you just take a moment to contemplate what you're giving today, remember that Unity provides practical spiritual teachings that help people live healthy, prosperous, and meaningful lives. And I'm going to take out my check here. If you're going to give it electronically on our website, unityofindy.com, on the Donate tab, just hold the amount that you give there in your mind. Otherwise, just hold what it is you're going to give today. Recognize that everything we give unconditionally and lovingly comes back to us multiplied. So open your heart and just pour love energy into what it is you're giving today. Recognize what a special opportunity we have here at Unity of Indianapolis to be a base camp for Central Indiana, just empower people to go out there and live their dreams. And let's say the affirmation on the screen together. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I give, all that I receive, and I am grateful.